My Dead Dad's Porno Tapes is a documentary directed by Charlie Tyrrell for the New York Times Updocs. The content is about a young man as he goes through the possessions of his father in an attempt to understand him posthumously. The film employs a modal hybrid, engaging with elements of expository, participatory, and reflexive modes. It is highly stylized, relying on archival footage and family photos to support the content and mode, with footage of the current environment as a contrast. It presents a relationship between a father and son, as Charlie collects the belongings of his father, and with the eponymous tapes not in fact being at the core of the narrative, but are rather the impetus for his emotional journey. Charlie's mother and siblings will give insight into the life and behavior of his father, as Charlie discovers the generational cycle of abuse within the family and the long-term ramifications it has. This theme of family forms the thematic core of the documentary, with several sub-themes spoken off of it. This includes parenthood, and that the parenting methods of 3 generations of family are discussed, 2 of which are abusive, and the 3rd attempting to break the cycle, however, not properly forming a bond. Abuse, in which Tyrrell investigates this cycle of abuse, and the long-standing effects that it has on an adult's interaction with other human beings and on successive generations. A secondary theme is that of the material, as discussed predominantly later in the subject of style. My Dad's Porno Tapes predominantly engages in elements of the expository mode, with a didactic voice of God narrator that follows Charlie's journey. The time of the narrative is discontinuous, but not entirely atemporal. His journey starts close to the present day, and then to his upbringing, in order to discuss his relationship with his father. It then moves to his father's upbringing and subsequently to his grandmother's before returning to the present. This temporal movement backwards highlights the thematic subjects of family and the recurrence of the themes of abuse and parenthood. However, it doesn't just observe the subjective as it observes the subjective as much as it observes the objective. It speculatively discusses the feelings and behaviors of people who are not explicitly there, and deconstructs the filmmaker's own actions. This exemplifies the participatory mode. It is the director's own relationship with his father that's examined, with this metatextuality being employed explicitly twice, once at the 2-minute 56-second mark, in which the title card is displayed, with a still of the film in the center, and surrounding the monitor is Charlie, in his room of possessions. The second is at the end of the piece, when the narrator describes over archival footage how, as a tribute to his father, Charlie ends his films with a quote, at which time the film cuts to the first credit, directed by Charlie Tyrrell. The metatextuality is a take on the reflexive mode of film, in that it explicitly concerns itself with the practice of filmmaking. However, Tyrrell eschews this and instead uses it to frame the narrative of his discovery of his family's history. It initially draws the audience in, heightening the emotional engagement with the subject as it is now a personal matter. The second instance, in regards to the credits, concludes the film's emotional arc, and although he never fully understood his father, he recognizes his father's attempts to bond with him in his own way. And Charlie's credit is an attempt to pay homage to him in his own way. My Dead Dad's Porno Tapes employs a highly formalist style to emphasize the modal components, the narrative, and themes. The most notable example of film language techniques used in the film is those of mise-en-scène, the photos and items against a white background, and the contrast between archival footage and newly recorded footage. The mise-en-scène is especially interesting in that the film's visuals. The mise-en-scène of the objects against a white background can be comprised of 2 categories: decades-old photographs of either the person talking or the subject of conversation. This gives a time frame of the subject, and with all subjects smiling, this highlights the recurrence of abusive behaviors being hidden by outward pleasantries, and items relating to an emotional beat in the narrative, such as a knife signifying the abuse. The archival footage, and the contrast of archival footage and current locations is also important, as it is used to emphasize the subjective emotional beats within the narrative. whereas the current modern footage of the locations of Charlie's homes are filmed in a 16:9 aspect ratio with dark colours and lacking any life, highly contrasting the archival footage with happy smiling people, bright lights, and narrow aspect ratios. This hybrid mode, consisting of the 3 different documentary modes, undertaking an unusual style, support the thematic and emotional core, with the contradictory nature of the father and son's relationship and the circumstances surrounding his family's history.